Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. I'm your host, an Untitled Anarchist Seagull called Elise. And what you were just seeing there for a second is I wanted to just set up a window here so we could actually look at the ruling, the ICJ's ruling as I talk about it. I'm going to talk about that for a little bit, and then we're going to get on with the usual roasting of the assorted hasbaroid jabronis that we love to hate on so well. But first, let me see. Giungi una cornice. Sì, ecco. A destra. Alto. Hey Riveroon, how you doing? I'm just getting this crop set up. It'll just take a second. There we go. And so, yeah. Great. Damn. Hang on, let me just fix that. Oh, I see the problem. No, that's not what I'm trying to move. And okay. So I had been streaming earlier today, so I only just over dinner got to look at this ruling. And I've only really looked at the key points, the actual order and everything. Hello, Paul DeMelto. How you doing? Oh, that's blocking out chat. That's not great. Hang on. And actually, in basso. Hell. Okay, so I was, yeah, I saw the headline. I saw the headline for that video. I haven't actually looked at it yet, but they have been doing some excellent reporting. I mean, they both their website and the live stream, which I think has been a great addition to their usual thing. Okay, here we go. So I didn't really get to look at the whole thing, but they had a lawyer and an international law specialist on to talk a little bit about what the ruling meant. And there is apparently, though I haven't really been on Twitter at all today since I was streaming and then I was relaxing from streaming and other shit. But, yeah, Electronic Intifada. Okay. But, so apparently there's been a lot of discussion around what this exactly means, and you can kind of see why. Because, now, one of the points that was made in that, sorry, in that interview is there have been two other genocide convention cases in the past couple of years. One, it was brought by Ukraine against Russia, and one was brought against Myanmar over the Rohingya genocide, also known as Zuckerberg's genocide, because of the important role that Facebook played in making that genocide possible by promoting genocidal propaganda. And so I call it Zuckerberg's genocide, and because he should wear that, because he's a fucking piece of shit. Okay, so now let's just look. First of all, we've got where is it? Is this Ukraine? Yeah. So we've got the Ukrainian case here. And what is the first thing is these are the provisional measures. The Russian Federation shall immediately suspend the military operations that it commenced on 24 February 2022 in the territory of Ukraine. The Russian Federation shall ensure that any military or irregular armed units which may be directed or supported by it, etc., take no steps in furtherance of the military operations referred to in point 1 above. Both parties shall refrain from any action which might aggravate or extend the dispute before the court or make it more difficult to resolve. So that is what they said when it was Russia. And it's worth noting, I mean, this has been pointed out a million times now, I mean, that, okay, first of all, it's important to remember, there is no quantitative requirement under the Genocide Convention. I mean, it isn't triggered by killing a certain number of people, though the ICJs generally ruled that there has to be, the actions under the convention have to affect a substantial part of the targeted population. But in any case, in just over 3 months, Israel and the US have killed way more people than both sides, especially children, than both sides have killed in Ukraine since the start of the Russian invasion there. So, if anything, the case should be stronger on those grounds alone. And aside from that, I mean, the statements of intent are much clearer. But, okay. So, that was the order. Very unequivocal in the case of Ukraine and Russia. Just stop the military operations. Now, here's Myanmar. This was unanimous. The other one was 13-2. The Republic of the Union of Myanmar shall, in accordance with its obligations under the convention, on the prevention, etc., in relation to members of the Rohingya group in its territory, take all measures within its power to prevent the commission of all acts within the scope of Article 2 of the convention, killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm, deliberately inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring about physical destruction, imposing measures intended to prevent births. Okay, so preservation of evidence. The Republic of the Union of Myanmar shall ensure that its military, as well as any irregular armed units which may be directed or supported by it, and any organizations and persons which may be subject to its control, direction, or influence, do not commit any of the acts we just listed, or conspiracy, or direct public incitement, or attempt to commit genocide, complicity, etc., and then preservation of evidence. So that's for those last two cases. Hey, Phoenix, how you doing? Now, okay, so in the case of Russia, they just say stop the military operation, just stop it, basically. And here they list the acts that constitute acts of genocide under the convention. They just quote the convention for that and say, don't do this, and nobody in your direction, including your military and any paramilitary groups or whatever, you have to also prevent them doing the stuff as well. Now, So those are sort of the options that the court kind of considers when it comes to these orders, if they consider that there is actually a prima facie case of genocide, which is all they're deciding at this point. They're not deciding on the merits. They're not making a definitive decision. This is like a preliminary injunction. It's basically what they have to determine is whether it's plausible that there is a case under the Genocide Convention. And they decided in all these cases that it was plausible enough to issue these provisional measures, which is like a preliminary injunction. So in the case of Israel, in Gaza, here, what have we got? Oh, that's Russia again. Here we go. The state of Israel shall, in accordance with its obligations, take all measures to prevent commission of all acts in scope of article. This is the same language, basically, as the Myanmar case. Just listing the acts of genocide from the convention, saying you have to take all measures to prevent these things. Now, and then also, the state of Israel shall ensure with immediate effect that its military does not commit any acts described in point 1 above. Take all measures to prevent and punish direct and public incitement to commit genocide in relation to members of the Palestinian group in the Gaza Strip. Immediate and effective measures to enable the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance to address the adverse conditions of life faced by Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. And then preservation of evidence, which is a standard thing. Okay, so, no, immediate effect, it says. What they have a month to comply on is a report on the measures that they have to also, one of the things South Africa had requested was that they should report on the measures they've taken to comply with the provisional measures that the court indicates. And they have a month to comply with that. A month to report on the things they did, but they have to do them immediately. But now the dispute, from what I understand, is this more, or is this a ceasefire? Is this less than a ceasefire? Is this more than a ceasefire? What exactly is this? And now what's true is they did not say stop your military operations. They did not say that. But the point Ali Abu Nima was making, and I think he actually does have a point here, is that you can't continue to do what Israel is doing in Gaza without killing members of the group, seriously harming them mentally or physically, or depriving them of the necessities of life. That literally they did not say they have to stop their military operation, but they've basically ordered them to stop everything that is their military operation, all the things that they're doing. Now, the lawyer that he was speaking to, and I forget her name, she pointed out that one way you can read this, see, there's a requisite intent in the Genocide Convention. That is actually the real sticking point, usually, because most people who commit genocide, are actually a little bit careful about openly admitting it. Hey, Shakespeare! So, yeah, normally they're kind of cautious about openly admitting it, like the Nazis in particular actually were very, very careful not to just go public with it, and actually to hide it in their internal documents with all sorts of euphemisms. But in the case of Israel, they've just kind of been unusually open about this being their intention. Now, what this lawyer said was, I mean, Israel could say, we're not doing these things with the requisite intent under the Genocide Convention, and all they said is we aren't allowed to do them if we have the requisite intent. And, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's and the thing is, yeah, I could totally see them doing that. I don't think that, hey, South of Sublime, I don't really think that is what I would call a good faith reading of this, because if they wanted to make intent part of their order, they certainly have that language. They could have cut and pasted that bit too, because all they did was cut and paste part of Article 2 of the Genocide Convention in that first part of their order. They could have done that. Yeah, Shakespeare's in the Twitch chat, but on screen, unless I've really fucked everything up. Yeah. Yeah, okay. You should be able to see the whole chat on screen, Twitch and YouTube. But they didn't, because it would be really, I mean, and you can see there's a good reason they wouldn't, because it kind of doesn't make sense to just say, you can continue killing them and doing serious bodily harm as long as you have you don't intend to do the thing we're telling you not to do. So I think that would also be more of a bad faith reading, but of course, here's the thing. I mean, I thought about tweeting this, and I just never got around to it yesterday, that we were essentially going to see whether the International Court of Justice was discredited or whether the entire international legal system was discredited, depending on what their ruling was. Because if they ruled anything other than indicating provisional measures and saying there was at least a plausible case for genocide, given that they ruled that in the case of Ukraine, in the case of Rohingya, in Myanmar, and those various other cases, I mean, they would be just utterly showing their asses. And I didn't really expect them to. I mean, for one thing, Israel didn't expect them to. Israel's entire line all along has been just to, try to delegitimize the court from the start. Not even saying that we have a strong case and we expect to prevail, the usual bullshit defendants say, even when they're dead to rights. They've just been, saying it's an illegitimate court and we don't care what they say. But I mean, they had precedent there. There was the advisory opinion on the wall, which also, it's worth remembering because a lot of people forget this. They actually consider the question of whether Israel has a right of self-defense against people it's occupying. Well, the Rohingya are not a state actor, but, I mean, Myanmar is a state actor. I mean, and really, in this case, it doesn't really make a difference from the Genocide Convention standpoint. Whether the victims have a state that claims to represent them or not. But, I mean, yeah, that is true. But, so, if they had if they had ruled any other way, they would have been utterly discrediting the court. But now that they've ruled this way, and given very specific provisional measures that really, I mean, if you read them in good faith, it's really hard to see how Israel could actually be in compliance and continue doing what they've been doing. Yeah, I mean, you would have to just twist this thing into a million different ways in order to make that argument and read a bunch of things into it that they very specifically omitted. But, yeah, I mean, which is wild because actually, if you hold, first of all, I mean, if you hold the Palestinian resistance to the same standard, they're actually performing, they would actually still come out better. Because, I mean, they've actually made a point, if you've been watching the videos that the resistance have been putting out of their operations, they've made a point of showing Israeli medevac helicopters that have been allowed to take off, despite the fact that they were in a position to take them out if they wanted to. Because they've shown they have the capability to take down helicopters. They've shown video of them doing it. So, I mean, and I can't help thinking that the point in showing that is specifically to say, look at us letting their military EMS do their jobs is in safety when they don't even let our civilian EMS do their jobs without attacking them. I can't believe that isn't part of what they're doing. Yeah, I mean, which hasn't always been the case, but this isn't 20 years ago. They have a completely different, I mean, their approach these days, I mean, it really has changed from the days of the martyrdom operations that they would do during the Second Intifada and stuff like that. But, I mean, they've made a point of that. And of course, now one of the things that the lawyer that Ali Abu Nima had on, and let me just, I'm just gonna drop that link in chat. Where's my viewing history, so everybody can check that out when they have a moment. They'd like to. Here we go. And maybe, does it say who his guest was? Let me see, because I keep calling her just the lawyer. I'm sure she has a name. They usually do, lawyers.
Saying that they are failing in their...
Okay. More. Susan Akram is her name. She is the director of Boston University Law's International Human Rights Clinic, taught at American University in Cairo and Al-Quds and Birzeit University in Palestine. Okay, so that's who she is, Susan Akram. Yeah, exactly. They have done that. Oh, yeah, they have. If they, let me put it this way. I have a feeling that if they were shooting down medevac helicopters, Israel would make an exception from their policy of not discussing casualties to talk about it. And it would be all over the place as evidence of Palestinian perfidy and shit. And the fact that they're not doing that says, oh, Nightbot, stop doing that. Hang on, I gotta make some adjustments to Nightbot, apparently. Log out. Authorize. Spam protection. Okay, the limit has been adjusted. So far, Nightbot has never helped out when it's been shit that I actually don't want to happen in chat. It's always been fucking with people whose messages I'm glad to see and I don't object to. But anyway, so the thing is, I think, yeah, so I hurt Nightbot by not giving proper instructions. That's on me. I don't know how to operate Nightbot properly. But so what I had been saying was that they had two different. They could either discredit themselves at the ICJ or discredit the institution, the entire institution system of international law and international institutions, by issuing a clearly legitimate ruling, as they have. I mean, I haven't read the whole thing, but I've read enough of it. I mean, the fact that the Israeli judge ad hoc was in dissent is a pretty good sign that it was a legit ruling. That was Aharon Barak, who's the former Chief Justice of the Israeli High Court, which has issued all sorts of rulings in favor of things like torture and hostage taking and apartheid and shit. Wonderful, wonderful fucking court system they got there. But so now they've issued a legitimate ruling that basically the U.S. is not going to comply with, and as long as the U.S. doesn't comply with it, Israel will feel no need to comply with it. I've been hearing that Dershowitz would join, which would be wild, because the man, I mean, he has so thoroughly discredited himself, not just as a person, as a human being, but as a lawyer. Because he keeps on taking cases in areas of law he doesn't know shit about. Like, election law. I mean, having him on a team that's supposed to be doing, international law would be just wild. But anyway... I have not read the dissenting opinions either. But so, they've issued this opinion, and fuck knows what's actually going to happen now. I mean, Yemen can certainly argue, and I'm sure they will, or maybe they already have and I haven't seen it, that their sanctions are consistent with that, since what the court did find is there is a plausible case that Israel's committing genocide. Now, I thought we'd move over to our usual scheduled programming. We've got another crossover episode of the Quad, the JNS TV, or the Zionist View. Yeah, the thing about not destroying evidence is a standard thing. That is always, I mean, preservation of evidence is always in provisional measures, because the whole point is this is to preserve the status quo until the court can rule on the merits. I mean, like, pretty much any kind of preliminary injunction is going to have something in there if there isn't a pre-existing duty to do it. So that's just standard shit. You find that everywhere. But okay, so we've got a crossover episode where Ben Gleib, the Zionist who makes Cenk Uygur look less crappy than he is going to be interviewed by the Zionist View, which is 3 Yanks and the fake mayor of Jerusalem, who is the daughter of 2 titled barristers from London. Then we've got a reminder of why Norman Finkelstein actually sucks, and has gotten worse over the years since he began his liberal Zionist cringe arc around the beginning of the BDS campaign. Oh, it is horrific. We've been looking at it. Oh, you've missed it. You haven't been around for these. So this'll be new. But, okay. And that is Norman Finkelstein explaining why wokeness is a scam. Lately, he's decided, in addition to liberal Zionism, to do some transphobia and stuff. And this, yeah. Oh, his take on a lot of things has just sucked. It's like, there are 2 Norman Finkelsteins. There's a Norman Finkelstein who wrote Image and Reality of the Israel-Palestine Conflict and a lot of really excellent, well-researched work. And who also, like, discredited from time immemorial. And, I mean, and now he claims that BDS is dishonest because they don't admit they want to destroy Israel and shit, and calling it a cult on account of it having an abbreviation, because when he was a Marxist-Leninist Maoist, they had abbreviations too, and abbreviations are what makes something a cult or something. I mean, he's been getting a whole lot of attention that honestly I have to say he doesn't deserve, because he has taken, specifically on Palestine as well, how his position's really shitty, actually, because he does not support right of return, and he claims that the demands of there's something wrong with the demands of equal rights, ending the occupation, and right of return, because it would result in the destruction of Israel. And it's fucked up, actually. So, oh, thank you. See, Nightbot, you're doing a thing that I actually like it when you do. Thank you, Nightbot. We've also got Phyllis Chesler. You may remember her from making the feminist case for murdering lots of people in Afghanistan back during the Bush years. Well, she is going to explain why feminists really have failed by not getting behind the genocide. And we've got the head of JNS TV on how anti-racism made anti-Semitism fashionable, which is another way of saying that he equates being Jewish with being fucking racist. So, we've got a number of options here. Does anyone have any strong preferences? Let me see, there might be other stuff too that I forgot. We've got Israel on trial! The hypocrisy of the Palestinian genocide claim, the Quad. That's more Zionist view. Okay, I've never heard of the Glenn Show. Yeah, I mean, I liked him actually a lot back in the early 2000s until he started doing this shit. He had a lot of goodwill that he just decided to squander by taking really shitty positions. And I think part of it is just burnout. I mean, because he started to take these really shitty positions around the time he got kicked out of a tenured job that he, just on account of supporting Palestinian rights and stuff like that. And then he started to, drift towards, liberal Zionism and shit. Okay, well, look at why Norman Finkelstein's actually kind of sucks. He's gonna show us himself why he actually kind of sucks. Who the hell is Glenn Loury? I've never heard of Glenn Loury. Riverrune, if you look up Norman Finkelstein BDS cult, and you look for
This is a scam. It's a very...
And you look at, and you look for a really old video where he says BDS is a cult. Yeah, it will be there. He says, because he says, in his MLM days, Marxist-Leninist Maoist days, we had DOP for dictatorship of the proletariat, and that meant that was a cult. And therefore BDS is a cult, because that's an abbreviation, and this was the quality of his argument. Okay, Glenn Loury, who is this guy? Never heard of him. American economist and academic. Economist already is reason to have one's doubts. Okay. Loury achieved prominence during the Reagan era. This is the Wikipedia article, link in chat. As a leading black conservative intellectual. In the mid-1990s, following a period of disillusion, he adopted more progressive views. Loury has somewhat realigned with views of the American right, with the New York Times describing his political orientation in 2020 as conservative-leaning. If the New York Times says that, then that basically means he's fash. He was on... Okay... On a 2017 episode of the Sam Harris podcast, well, that tells you a bit. He stated that while he used to be a Reagan conservative, now he thinks of himself as a centrist Democrat, or maybe a mildly right-of-center Democrat. Which is basically a Reagan conservative. This political positions thing is just weird. Because he says, he has spoken out in opposition to cancel culture. On January 9, 2007, Loury spoke against increasing the number of troops in Iraq. Well, I don't think it happened in that order, actually, Wikipedia. Because nobody had ever, fascists hadn't made up cancel culture back then. He supported Hillary Clinton. He opposes reparations for slavery and affirmative action. Well, affirmative action mostly benefits, university-educated white women. Okay, so, basically reactionary grifter. So here we go. Norman Finkelstein is going to tell us why Norman Finkelstein sucks shit anymore. Also, Norman Finkelstein doesn't understand the rule of thirds. Hey, Knight's Reign. So long that I don't remember your name, actually. Did you used to use a different username?
Well, this is a scam. It's a very lucrative scam.
Yeah, everybody knows. I think we're all fairly woke here. You're just raking in the money. All you have to do is say, you know, that sounds kind of racist, and the money just rolls in. I mean, it's a very, very lucrative scam. Oh, I have to... claro. Hay que sacar el PDF. Ahora sí, ¿no? And tell me, how's the audio, too? Okay, so wokeness is a lucrative scam, apparently.
But it's a scam. It's a scam because, A, it has no scholarly content.
That's what makes it has no scholarly content. Well, okay. Now, Norman Finkelstein has previously actually genuinely demonstrated that he understands how to do scholarly work. So one thing we should listen to is, does he actually ever do the scholarly thing and define what the fuck he means by wokeness? I mean...
It has no intellectual content.
Okay, but what is it?
It's a scam because it's highly remunerated.
He doesn't sound so good. Remunerated? Is he all right?
Intellectual vacuity. And it's a scam because rich white folks use the woke people as a protective cover. Because they get to say, look how radical we are.
I mean, he's not entirely wrong with that. Yes, there is a lot of performative bullshit that rich white people do, but I mean, if there's any remunerative, lucrative scam around wokeness, it's being anti-woke. That's where the fucking money is. You don't... it's go woke, go broke, except you also make a bunch of money. Apparently. I don't know. First we were supposed to be getting paid by Soros for opposing Nazis, and I never got that fucking money. And now, apparently, I'm supposed to be cashing my wokeness checks, but I haven't been getting any. And meanwhile, I mean, I never get the fucking meeting notes from the gay agenda, so I know what I'm voting on. And I'm beginning to think that they're not even, that I'm not on the gay agenda mailing list. And yeah. Well, I mean, he describes himself as basically a right-winger.
Look how
which makes him kind of a liberal, yeah.
Okay, we're underway here at the Glenn Show. This is Glenn Lowry. I teach at Brown University. I'm a Merck Stoltz professor and a professor of economics at Brown. And I'm also a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute, which sponsors the Glenn Show. And I'm with Norman Finkelstein. Norman's a political scientist and a prolific, independent intellectual and writer with wide interest and I want my audience to know who Norman Finkelstein is. And if I may, with your permission, Norman, I want to share, some of your books, the most recent of which is I'll Burn That Bridge When I Get to It.
Okay. I mean, I'm curious. I never heard of Sublation Press. Sublation Media is a left publisher that critiques the left in order to transform it. Chris Cutrone. Oh, this is Platypus. These motherfuckers are Platypus adjacent. Chris Cutrone? Holy shit, I haven't heard of him in a long time. I mean, Chris Cutrone, one of his big things was that he was a supporter of the war against Iraq and felt that leftists ought to be supporters of the war against Iraq. Let's see, what other books have they got? Is that it? Okay. They've only got 5 books. And one of them is by Chris Cutrone. Oh, Zero Books. Zero Books. They're the ones who publish all sorts of white supremacist Holocaust denial stuff.
which is a critique of woke political culture, which we'll get to in a moment. Holocaust Industry, 2000. Beyond Chutzpah, 2005. Gaza.
Yeah, now we're getting to the actual really worthwhile books that he wrote.
An Inquest into Its Martyrdom, 2018.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, the farther back you go, the better his writing is. Like, I mean, Beyond Chutzpah, I own. I've read it quite a bit. It is a complete just dissection of Alan Dershowitz's bullshit book, Chutzpah. The Holocaust Industry was very good on the way, essentially, Swiss banks were being shaken down and actual needy Holocaust survivors weren't seeing any of the fucking money. Yeah. There's some excellent stuff. The Manhattan Institute is not pseudo left. They do not claim to be leftist. They are an explicitly conservative white supremacist think tank. That's where Chris Rufo is from, the guy who invented calling LGBT people groomers. He's also the guy who invented pretending to be angry about critical race theory. They don't even pretend to be left. They're not pseudo left.
What else have we got here? A Nation on Trial.
This was good.
What Gandhi says about nonviolence.
Yeah, I didn't read this, but I remember I heard him talk about it quite a bit. And this was kind of where he started to move to really just straight up, like, liberal Zionism.
This time we went too far, 2010.
Which, I mean, that isn't one I haven't actually gotten around to reading either, but I've heard him talk a lot about it, and actually sounds like it was probably quite worthwhile, and among other things, he points out that after the Cast-Lead massacre in 2008-2009, polling actually showed, like, in the under 30s at the time of the U.S. Jewish community, there was a big divorce underway from Zionism.
Knowing Too Much, 2012, and on. The Rise and Fall of Palestine. This is an amazing range of productivity.
He left out Image and Reality of the Israel-Palestine Conflict, which is, I have to say, probably his best book.
Norman. I see a lot of it has to do with Israel, Palestine, Jewish identity. You're infamous.
Not sure if I'm infamous. I would say that that despite my having been, and I don't say this is a matter of pity, honestly I don't. If I want to invoke pity, I'll give a trigger warning. Be careful, I'm going to try to invoke pity. I'm just...
Yeah, you see, because you gotta make fun of people with PTSD. Yeah, I mean, you gotta make fun out of people, I mean, apparently.
Speaking as a factual matter, I've managed to have a presence, notwithstanding the fact that in mainstream culture, I'm never cited, never mentioned in books, never invited to speak. I've never been on national television, never been...
Yeah, what's interesting about that is that at this point, I mean, his positions on Palestine are very much sort of liberal Zionist mainstream shit. Like, when he talks about what he actually thinks ought to happen, it's, you know, it's like the two-state solution. He still believes in the fucking two-state solution. He's like the last true believer in it. But, I mean, a big part of this, and it's interesting, it's too bad he didn't mention the book. The reason he has been shut out for so long, even well before that, was that he really embarrassed a lot of very influential people when he exposed From Time Immemorial as a hoax. Because that thing had been blurred by a who's who of U.S. intellectuals. And all he did was spend a summer in the library going through the citations to show that she just made shit up.
You've never been on national television?
No, absolutely. Not even close. Not even close. I once was on for 20 minutes, I think about 35 years ago, on NPR. No, 10 minutes. 10 minutes on NPR.
Wait a
And
second,
that's
wasn't he
where
on
it
Phil
began,
Donahue?
that's where it ended.
Hang on, I feel like I remember hearing him. Was he ever Norman Finkelstein, Phil Donahue? No, he's not. He wasn't on Phil Donahue. I had this weird feeling that I remembered seeing him in the 80s, that I'd remembered that name being on there, but apparently not.
So I think what I would say is, notwithstanding.
Okay, see, this is one, his position on, a lot of people actually lie about what he said about David Irving. That is one where there is some pushback that is needed, because what he actually said was, he pointed out that a lot of mainstream, he's definitely not been on Phil Donahue, at least I can't find any record of it, a lot of mainstream respected Holocaust historians find the work of denialists like Irving useful as a way of focusing their inquiries. Like, including the dean of Holocaust studies, the guy who founded the discipline, Raoul Hilberg, said, and he quotes them saying, it is that, in their dishonesty, they do something useful because they come up with this bullshit, and it sometimes raises questions that actual legit researchers could go and research, and they get interesting information out of it. That is what he actually said. He's actually very specifically said, in fact, in the thing that is often very selectively quoted, in a passage in the Holocaust industry, if I remember correctly, that obviously you have to just dismiss his Holocaust denial because that stuff is bullshit. He makes it very clear he is not. He very clearly says that's a bunch of crap. What Irving says on that. All he is very specifically saying is that Irving, because he's a sophisticated denialist, actually raises useful questions. Yeah, I mean, at the time, when Hilberg first told his dissertation advisor that he wanted to work on the Holocaust, the dissertation advisor told him it would be the end of his career because everyone would think he was a communist. Because it was like those communists were basically the only people even talking about the Holocaust in those days. He broke a huge taboo by studying it.
My consecutive cancellations, I've managed to exert some sort of influence and have some sort of presence, of which I derive a certain amount of gratification.
Okay, I'm just going to ask you this straight up. Do you think that you've been blacklisted in effect by the influence of people friendly to Israel and Jewish causes, not only Jews, but many?
Not Jewish I mean, see, that's already bullshit. What he means is Zionism.
Deeply resent the trenchant critique that you've elaborated in book after book after book after book about what's going on in Israel, Palestine, and about the various pathological features of American Jewish identity. If I could say that, and correct me if I say something that's wrong, that you've basically been shut out because what I see is a career of scholarly productivity and a fierce devotion to detail and a kind of...
Okay, I'm going to skip over some of this to see. I'm kind of curious. I'm going to what he says on is Israel an apartheid state, because he has actually been. Yeah, I mean, what gets me about the about Norman Finkelstein, what Norman Finkelstein has said about Holocaust denialists, is that you literally can point to all sorts of well-respected, legitimate Holocaust researchers, academic specialists in the period, who have said these things, but nobody goes after them for it. Like Hilberg said this. He quotes Hilberg as pointing out that you can't ignore the denialists because they are constantly poking holes, and the holes they poke give you a place to look as a researcher. Okay, is he... Now, previously, he had actually sort of shat on the idea of Israel being an apartheid state, so...
Expecting to push back Israel apartheid. Palestine, South Africa. You want to take a moment to spell out... I know we're not supposed to be talking about this, but they're going to say, aren't they?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. As I said, I don't want to go off on this tangent because then you don't get to participate except as a interlocutor, except as a questioner. And I told you in the email, yours is the interviewer's most.
Okay, let's skip it.
Well, first answer, so people won't accuse me of being evasive or not doing the job. The claim about Israel apartheid,
exactly, that's right.
At a point in time, it would require a long explanation and long justification. But nowadays, the major human rights organizations, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, the main Israeli human rights organization, B'Tselem, the Israeli Information Center for Human Rights in the Occupied Territories, they all refer to it as apartheid now. It ceased to be a controversial label.
Which is interesting. They got there before he did. I remember him pushing back against that in the past.
Even if you open up the current issue of Foreign Affairs, now you'll agree Foreign Affairs is not a radical publication. There's an article.
Go ahead.
There's an article by three respected scholars who refer to Israel's regime as a Jewish supremacist regime.
Which, okay, that is actually problematic because Zionism is white supremacist. Zionism is not... First of all, Jewish supremacism is a term that's already unfortunate because literal David fucking Duke invented it in the first place. I don't think it can really be helped. I can try to make some adjustments, but... probably can't. But okay. So, first of all, the term Jewish supremacism comes from David Duke. And it is one of those things that is used to, like, move into claims about Jews ruling the world and all that bullshit. For another thing, Zionism is actually... there are people who, like, try to cut off Zionism in a way that does not deal with the crucial part about what Zionism says about Jews in the rest of the world. Because Zionism starts from the idea that Jews have no right to live in the places we're from. That we're foreigners in the places we're from. And our only chance is to redeem ourselves by colonizing our national soil. That is Zionism. And it is white supremacist, including if you look at the kind of hierarchy that exists amongst people who are considered Jewish under the race laws in Israel. Because it is the European Jews who are at the top of that hierarchy. And they treat everybody else like shit. It is very truly a white supremacist regime, and it falls within global white supremacism, and the only reason that anyone would want to try to decouple it from white supremacism is to just avoid making white supremacists uncomfortable.
It's an apartheid regime. So you don't really have a job to do right now because it's only the fanatics who are denying the apartheid nature of Israel right now. It used to be only the fanatics who made the claim, but now the tables have substantially turned, and conventional public opinion would not find that a problematic description of Israel.
This triggers a thought in my mind about what is the de facto nation. I suppose the argument here is that there's really only one state between the Jordan and the Mediterranean.
That's my opinion.
And that's how it gets to be South Africa, in effect. I mean, and you're trying to do homelands if you...
Well, except, I mean, the thing about South Africa, first of all, it doesn't have to be like South Africa to be apartheid. Because apartheid is also a legal term. It's a crime against humanity defined under the Rome Statute, and it has certain requirements. It doesn't have to be done by analogy to South Africa. But one interesting thing to always remember when you talk about South Africa is that their goal, the apartheid regime's goal, was a two-state solution. They wanted the Bantustans, these fucking reservations that they pushed the majority of the indigenous population onto, to be recognized as sovereign states, so that they could then pretend that they had no responsibility for anything that went on there, and also had a justification for denying them any representation in the national government. But I'm going to skip over. I want to hear about wokeness, the triple scam.
This is W.E.B. Du Bois, whom you're discussing here, is Black Reconstruction. That's published in the 1930s, isn't it?
He wrote that when he was in his late 60s.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting ready to say. The reason we're talking about Du Bois is that you're offering him as a counterpoint to the light, paper-thin intellectuality that passes for being serious in the anti-racism literature.
There was a moral grandeur to Du Bois.
Well, I mean, the thing, what they're going to avoid talking about, I don't think Lowry would want to acknowledge this, that a big part of why the substance in Du Bois comes from the fact that he was a Marxist, actually. So he was not just looking at a surface level thing. He was putting this into a broader context of the socioeconomic system and how all of this connects to capitalism as well. That is where the depth comes from. And, liberal anti-racism just always kind of stops short of that.
And then you juxtapose
I can't wait to see.
With this comic book version of history where there are superheroes and supervillains, these absurdities where Frederick Douglass is cast as a racist.
This is Kendi.
Yeah, from X Kendi. Douglass is a racist. Richard Wright is...
Wait, what? Who the hell's saying Frederick Douglass is a racist?
Is a racist. Phyllis Wheatley is a racist. And the only non-racists are Eldridge Cleaver, Zora Neale Hurston, and Angela Davis.
Who the fuck is claiming this? Hey, chat, help me out here. Has anyone heard anyone say that, Frederick Douglass, Phyllis Wheatley, and all those people that he listed are racists? And the only people who aren't are Eldridge Cleaver and Angela Davis, which are very interesting choices. Since last I checked, let me just make sure before I say something completely wrong and cringe. But Cleaver. Okay. Yeah. I mean, okay, Cleaver became... Okay, I was wanted to make sure that Cleaver was the one that I was thinking of who ended up becoming a right-wing, an outright Republican. I mean, and Angela Davis, who, still, sounds radical until it comes to solutions, and it's vote for the Democrats and shit. None of this shit. None of this makes any sense. Especially because, usually one of the points that's kind of made by people who are, referred to as woke is that racism is a actual system of power, and, people who are on the uncomfortable end of white supremacy can't be racist, so I really don't think Ibram Kendi? Is that okay? I had not heard the name Kendi before.
Is this history? Is
No,
this serious?
no.
It's such woke garbage.
So okay, so what does woke mean, Norm?
It's a disgrace to the memory of those who labored hard
Amen. Amen.
out of the limelight. Remember, the boys could not get a job in a white university. And quietly in his,
That's because Booker T. Washington cut him off at the knees, isn't it?
well,
Yeah, I mean, what he's just seems to have just skipped over actually explaining what woke is, which is sort of standard for the anti-woke grift, which he's now on.
I've read David Levering Lewis's just utterly brilliant biography of Du Bois. That too is a breathtaking achievement. Not at the Boysian level.
Oh, okay. Is that something Kendi Douglas? I'm gonna just look this up because I'm curious. Did he actually say this? Okay. No, I mean, what he said, okay, so he describes him as having racist ideas. Which, I mean, is not quite the same thing as what Norman Finkelstein actually just said. Because somebody can have, like, it's one thing to say, it would be actually kind of wild if anyone was saying that, Frederick Douglass was racist. I mean, that's the sort of thing that you'd expect Vosh to say. Oh, I have not seen that. That would be actually a real low point for him.
Well, but certainly it's certainly deserving of high regard. But the point is that he labored at Atlanta University, one of the historically black colleges and universities. He would organize every year these conferences where, because he had connections with the white academic at places like Harvard, where he studied, he would bring them over in order to attend the conference, pass judgment on the scholarly quality of the students he was nurturing. But this was, he had to beg and plead, really had to beg and plead to get any dollar in funding. He would, he would make proposals which were very sophisticated, required a significant amount of financial subsidy to carry out. And he begged and pleaded. Well, the boys would never beg, but he had to try very hard to get support for it.
But what's this got to do with wokeness?
Enduring works. And then you have a Kendi. He gets, my understanding is, at Boston University, he gets $500,000 for being the director of the quote-unquote Center for Anti-Racism Studies. He probably gets roughly the equivalent, another $500,000 for being the Andrew Mellon Professor of the Humanities at Boston University. That's the second one's my speculation. The first one I know. Then he speaks the other day at Camden, literally the other day, we're talking about last week, at Camden University branch of Rutgers.
So what? I mean, so Ibram Kendi's getting paid. So what? Like, how does that make wokeness lucrative? What even is wokeness, Norman? I mean, like, I am not gonna try to verify every single bit of it. I mean, because at this point, I mean, that doesn't really matter. Like, okay, so one guy's getting paid. Academic gets paid. New film at 11. What the hell does this have to do with whether wokeness is even a coherent concept that he can't define?
He gets $30,000 for 1.5 hours, and a first-class ticket, airline ticket.
Knight's Reign says, I mean, I've been saying for a while, if one of these grifters could lay down a coherent definition instead of this nebulous hokum, I might actually give their argument some credence. They never will. Yeah, exactly, because then, at the very least, there would be a thing to measure their statements against. And yeah, like, the only person I've ever seen attempt to define wokeness, actually attempt to provide some kind of definition, is our friend, a wonderful Nazgul ghoul, Caleb fucking Maupin. That he's the only one who's actually tried, and his definition was buck wild. He filmed himself trying to define wokeness as he walked down the streets of Brooklyn, as you do. And I mean, it was just like, I mean, that was a hot mess too. So like, we've got either no definition at all or a fucking hot mess from a Nazgul. Those are like the two options for defining wokeness so far.
$30,000. Wokeness is a scam. It's a very lucrative scam, but it's a scam. It's a scam because A, it has no scholarly content. It has no intellectual content.
Like, he hasn't really made that argument. And he's actually mischaracterizing, from what I saw anyway, what Kendi actually said about Douglas. He said, I mean, because he said he has I found it was in a review. I haven't read Kendi. In fact, I actually hadn't heard of the man until now. But I found a review, and he's quoted, and this must be what Finkelstein's talking about, referring to Frederick Douglass from his anti-racist best to his racist worst. And so, which sounds like what he's actually saying is that Frederick Douglass, having, lived in a seriously racist-ass society, probably had some unexamined reactionary ideas, like kind of we all probably do, which is not the same thing as saying a black anti-slavery campaigner is a racist.
It's a scam because it's highly remunerated intellectual vacuity. And it's a scam because
it's remunerated. They, they take it up on the Apollo project to the moon. They remunerate it.
Rich white folks use the woke people as a protective cover because they get to say, look how radical we are. Look how cutting edge we are. We invited Ibram X. Kendi, Angela Davis to Martha's Vineyard. In the case of Angela Davis.
Yeah, but so like white capitalists use the liberal versions of radical critiques in order to make themselves look good. Wow, that still doesn't tell us what the fuck wokeness is and why everything that is referred to as wokeness can be dismissed as a scam. Like, this is weak sauce. It's actually kind of sad watching this, because even with all the things he said that suck, I've always had a lot of respect for Norman Finkelstein as a researcher, because he's really fucking good at that when he's at his best. His citations are generally very good sources, and some of them are very dense and long fucking books. And, his recommended reading in his books on Palestine, for example, tends to be worthwhile. Until he started getting into, like, his ideas on the thing. Like, his ideas on how to go forward. Shut up about Gandhi. Gandhi did not even succeed at his stated objective, and you're gonna try to bring Gandhi into Palestine? He had shitty ideas on Palestine when he was alive.
To lecture on prison abolitionism, we get the frisson of being down with the hood and paying no price at all. No price at all. Listen, you're old enough to remember, if I can say so, you're old enough to remember when Leonard Bernstein invited the Black Panthers to his apartment for that soiree. And then Tom Wolfe
Radical chic and Mau Mau and the Flycatchers.
Yeah. And he wrote that, I'll give this much to Leonard Bernstein. We can argue about it, disagree. It took a certain amount of courage to invite the Black Panthers because they were...
Well, yeah, because the government was literally assassinating them.
Hounded by the government. Now, you may think they were justifiably hounded. I don't, but we could disagree about that. But it took a certain amount
Well, I mean, that's a relief. He doesn't think that the Black Panthers were justifiably hounded.
Courage. What courage does it take to invite Ibram X. Kendi to Martha's Vineyard? What courage does it take to invite Angela Davis?
Considerably less than it took about, say, 40 years ago.
There is no price at all to...
But, I mean, yeah, all of this stuff, but this, like, what the fuck is wokeness, Norman? Define wokeness. What is wokeness? Where's the scam? Yeah, I mean, what you're describing was a thing before wokeness was a fucking pejorative used by right-wingers. And it's possible to make the critique that, I mean, the parts of this that are quite valid that he's making without, like, using right-wing buzzwords. Like, what exactly does that add to the thing? This is just, I mean, this is better than I thought. Yes, he actually did just say down with the hood. Yeah, he did say that.
To be paid for this wokeness. That's why I say it's a triple scam. It's a scam because it's intellectually worthless.
Like, I mean, but to say that it's intellectually worthless requires you to actually define what it is. Because, I mean, I have not heard a definition of wokeness from the people who use it as a pejorative, and from the people who use it actually, it originated as a term in African American vernacular English for people who understood what was going on. And I can't think of a single case where somebody would say that, Ibram Kendi or Angela Davis was woke, but not W.E.B. Du Bois. I literally cannot imagine that. He's making a distinction that makes absolutely no sense with the usage of this term. He's, like, invented a version of this specifically for him to be able to get angry at and make money off of a book. Like, I mean, speaking of grifting.
It's a scam because it's a very highly remunerated scam. And it's a scam by white folks who want to pretend how cutting edge and radical they are, but having their cake and eating it, not paying any price whatsoever.
Yeah, but again, that's like, okay, this is not the same thing. Like, what is your definition of wokeness at this point? Because if his definition of wokeness is white people flirting with, rich white people flirting with liberal critiques of racism and white supremacism, I don't think that is how anyone else is using it. Like, it seems like he has just invented his own version of what wokeness means, though he's never actually defined it. Because if he were to define this term as this, then it would be very obvious that he's just making... This is not a novel point to be making. People have been making the point. Fucking Tom Lehrer made this point. Tom Lehrer in, like, National Brotherhood Week, his song. Which, by the way, Tom Lehrer's stuff is completely free of copyright. He released it to the public domain. You can use that shit however you want. And he's put it all up on his website to download and stuff. But, I mean, if you strip this of the use of the word wokeness, all he's doing is making a critique that, Phil Oakes was making with Love Me, I'm a Liberal. That fucking Tom Lehrer was making. That a million fucking people have made. That, this is like, there's absolutely nothing novel about this. Like, so, I mean, if his definition is, white people flirting with liberal critiques of institutions they profit from? What I mean, like, literally nobody's using it that way. Like, literally, if we can, I mean, we watched on this channel sometime in the past few weeks, The Quad, which I love the name because in Afrikaans, quad is like pissed off, and they are always pissed off about something. Because, actually, I mean, they're racist propagandists for Israel, and that is a hard thing to do anymore because, you know, to a great extent, the game is fucking up. But they were sitting here talking about how the woke is what is supporting Hamas. So, I mean, like, literally, the people who are using this anti-wokeness grift there's no way that they would not consider Norman Finkelstein to be an example of fucking wokeness. Die Quad.
For their liberal wokeness.
Okay,
Like,
now
you keep using that term, Norman. I do not think it means what you think it means.
Angela Davis is this iconic figure in radical circles. What's wrong
Well,
with...
I mean, she's less iconic in radical circles anymore because she's kept on ending up aligning herself with all sorts of ruling class assholes. Like when she absurdly claimed that Barack Obama, who beat like Wall Street fundraising records, she claimed that he came into the White House against the power of money, and it's like, where?
With her and her case for prison abolition, and I don't support prison abolition.
I'm
on
shocked.
the record to that effect, but you want to spell it out? Ibram X. Kendi, I don't think is worth discussing. I mean, I don't understand why. Why is there an endowed center at Boston University?
Well, I mean, like, so, like, if we're taking Norman's version of wokeness here, then the question becomes even more ridiculous. Because, like, why is it that, like, all these liberal, superficial critiques of white supremacism get all sorts of foundation money, but, like, communists like W.E.B. Du Bois don't? And it's like, what fucking system do you think we're living in? Obviously, it's gonna be the liberal critiques that get the money. It's gonna be the liberal critiques that get the endowed chairs. You're not, I mean, it is, I mean, I think probably you would have to look very hard to find somebody who was, like, anti-capitalist in any sense of the word, with any kind of seniority and tenure in the academic system, except to the extent that it was that their political views were totally unrelated to their academic work. I'm sure somebody could probably find a counterexample, but I don't think that would probably be the rule.
I don't get it at all. I mean, I really don't.
Because Jack Dorsey wants to cover himself, so he gave $1 million to Ibram X. Kendi. But wait, when you read Ibram X. Kendi, he says how proud he is of his black roots, and how proud he is of his black space, and how proud he is of this black and that black and that black. Well, why didn't he take his $10 million and go to an HBCU? Why?
I feel like this was okay. This was the sort of shit that he said about BDS, and so he like criticized Marwan Barghouti for living in Palestine and going to a university in Israeli-controlled Palestine. Like that, like he was breaking the boycott by like staying in the place Israel's trying to kick Palestinians out of. I feel like he did. I feel like he said that years ago.
Why did he go to Boston University? He had the option. He said he's so proud.
Well, why shouldn't he? Like, why exactly why shouldn't he? Like, what, you don't think there are any black people at Boston University? I think there probably are, dude.
He attended an HBCU. Florida, I can't remember, one of the Florida institutions. Why didn't you take your money there if you're so proud? And you say white people can't understand you. You say that black people have their own mental processes, black people have their own language, Ebonics. And so,
What fucking decade are you from, Norm? Like, are you coming to us straight from 1992 here? Nobody's called it Ebonics since I was in high school. And newsflash, I'm 44. I haven't heard, the last time I heard Ebonics was in the movie Bulworth from the late 1990s. It's been AAVE for a long time. And is he really gonna shit on the fact that, like, black people in the US develop their own language like colonized people have done in a lot of situations? That's actually where Afrikaans comes from. That's colonized people trying to engage with the linguistic environment that they found themselves in. Like, if you were just making a critique of liberal anti-racism and not just like trying to jump onto it, I can't really see this as anything other than trying to jump onto the right-wing bandwagon of like getting angry about wokeness, whatever defining what it is.
that's what he says. Fine. Then why are you going to a university which, according to you, they can't possibly understand the word you're saying?
Like, does he not think that there are black people at Boston University? Like, yeah, like, is the idea that if you, not wanting, I have not read enough of Ibram Kendi to have any real opinion on his views, although I do think we've already seen an example of, from what I've been able to gather from just doing a couple of quick Google searches, Norman misrepresenting them a bit, but it's not exactly inconsistent to say that, you're proud of your background and your culture and your language and stuff like that, and then insist on going to an institution that actually historically people of your background have been excluded from. Like, is he saying that somebody who is, really in touch with like their Jewish roots and stuff should only go to like Brandeis or Yeshiva University or HUC or something like that? Like, what the fuck is this? Like, this makes no fucking sense.
You say that black people think differently than white people. Well, that's like me speaking to a Chinese audience that doesn't know any English. Why would I want to establish my anti-racist center in a place where they don't understand the word I'm saying?
Well, maybe because the idea is that, and again, I could be getting Kendi completely wrong here because I've not actually read the man. I'm not claiming to know anything about what he said, but there's an obvious reason you would want to take anti-racism in a racist society to a place where members of the group on the comfortable end of that racist system would actually be exposed to it. Because the thing is, you've got to actually engage to some extent with people in the dominant group in a racist system, in hopes that at least some of them, in addition to your own people and other people who are on the uncomfortable end of racism, you're engaging with them anyway, but you might also want to engage with people on the comfortable end of it and say, yeah, your shit is fucked up. Yeah, this is fucked up. You're benefiting from a fucked up system, and maybe that shouldn't exist. I don't know if that's what Kendi's all about. I have no idea, and I hold absolutely no brief for the man. But, I can, this is a bullshit point.
Then he says education is pointless because white people gain from white privilege and all white people gain from the oppression of black people. Fine, there's an argument there. I'm not going to parse it. But
well, so like, what does that mean? There's an argument there. I'm not gonna. So is he acknowledging that there's actually some validity to that statement, and therefore he's not going to try to push back against it? In which case, like, again, you're just sort of acknowledging that the stuff that you call wokeness, the stuff that is conventionally called wokeness by people who are trying to dismiss it, has a point. I mean, this just feels like a grift to me. Like, he's just decided to stick a right-wing buzzword on a fairly conventional pedestrian critique of, liberal anti-race. Like, I just got done, and let me just say, I'm really fucking proud of this, and we're wrapping up, but I want to say this. I finished the manuscript of the Kollontai book. I finished it. I finished the translators for it. I finished the about the translator. I put in the dedication, and I finished the edit, and I sent that shit off to the publisher where it's going to be copy edited and come out in book form in about a year. It will be up on and in PDF format on Patreon, and I will be dropping. I have to write an announcement, and I've just been relaxing because I've been working on that shit for an entire year. And I'm just kind of relaxing a bit, but I'm going to drop it in the Discord for anyone who's interested. Let me drop that Discord link as well. But let me say, Kollontai was making this critique. She was making the critique of liberal women's rights organizations in the early 20th century and how they would sound very radical. They would make all sorts of radical proposals and stuff like that, but they wanted to keep their own shit in place. Oh, and that's not what I was trying to do. That's not what I was actually... Ignore that. That's the shitty-ass publisher that his book is being published at, the one that Platypus is associated with. Here's the Discord link. And I'm going to pop that PDF in the Discord. But, this critique, if this is all what he's talking about when he's talking about wokeness, has been around for a very long time. He is treading some extremely well-trodden ground here. And with that, it is time for me to wrap it up. Thank you to everyone who's joined in. I hope you enjoyed the stream. Hope to see you in Discord. And hope to see you tomorrow night at 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time as we continue the Last JabroniCon. If you enjoy the stream, please consider supporting the stream. No, fuck no. I am not working for Sublation Media. I just accidentally... That was the link. I had gotten that link in there because I was trying to look at the website to see what other books that they had so I could get an idea what kind of publisher it was because I'd never heard of them. And I did not succeed in hitting copy on the Discord link. Is there any way I can just delete that fucking... fuck it. But anyway, if you enjoy the stream, please consider supporting the stream using the tip command or by joining my Patreon. Have a very good night. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Yeah, it's Haymarket is the publisher.